What's up, guys? RV returns back again. This time with me and Chris Adams. So we're both going to
Hey,
tackle some ice reviews. So ice is pretty threatening right now in the current meta, and see if they got some new stuff, some new toys to play with.
well, I think they did. And I think what they got kind of creates a little bit of variety, not just for mono ice, but for like ice X decks, in my opinion. So I'm ready to dive in, dude.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at some cards. Here, so first up we have Ysayle. So it's a 4 CP backup. When Ysayle
Mhm.
enters the field, you may search for one ice forward and add it to your hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's as advertised. I know we've talked about her on our podcast. She's going to do exactly what she wants to do. No tricks, no geometry. Find a nice forward. Probably a one of in some decks. Some decks.
Yeah, basically this is the ice Merle web, pretty much.
Yeah.
So I don't really see this being too much use in the current like mono ice builds, but maybe you really need certain forwards or something like that. It could be very useful. It's a nice generic tutor, basically.
Yeah. So it's fine. It's not lighting the world on fire, but it's fine.
Yeah. So next up we have Emina. She's
hmm
a Type Zero backup, 2 CP. When she
hmm
enters the field, choose a forward, freeze it. It has to be an opponent's forward. Two
hmm
ICP, two colorless, tap, break. Choose one dull forward, break it. You can only use this ability during your turn.
Um, I don't know. I mean, she is obviously searchable by a card that I think is way more relevant. Um, I don't know. I don't know if she sees play. She is a two CP backup, which is never bad, but I don't know. I don't think she's great.
Yeah, so she is searchable. There's also like an older version of the backup that actually makes the searchable guy cheaper, so I think that one's probably gonna be better.
I forgot there is an older version of her. That may be the way to go.
Um, to me, she's just a bad Jill,
Yeah,
honestly.
I agree. I agree.
Like I'd rather just put Jill in over this card, to be honest.
hmm
So
12
yeah,
times out of 10.
moving on. Next up, we have Scholar, another backup 2 CP standard unit. When it enters the field, choose one forward. It costs two or less opponent's controls. Dull it and freeze it.
It's two CP. It's a standard unit, so maybe there's something there, but otherwise, it's not really doing much. I mean, yes, it can get maybe some of those little pesky two drops out of the way, which there's a couple in this set that can really be just a ball buster. But I don't know. Again, I think it's fine. Nothing crazy.
Yeah, I think it's kind of bad actually.
hmm
I really don't think it's going to see much play just because of how limited it is.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I agree. It's super narrow.
Yeah, again, I'd rather just run more Jills. So,
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
so next up we have Kazusa, another backup
hmm
Type Zero, 5 CP. When it enters the field, choose a dull forward, deal it 10k. For one ice, one colorless, tap, break, choose two forwards, dull them.
hmm
What do you think about this guy?
Hey, is it the this? Oh yeah. I think this guy's fine. I think his problem is though he's named Kazuza, and I think the other Kazuza is still just a little more relevant right now because of the discard. And also now on the upside, Kazuza is searchable again by that same card I mentioned earlier that I think is absolutely fantastic. I can see this guy seeing play in maybe like Ice Earth decks, Ice Fire decks, as a one of because he does have that second ability. But again, I think he's overshadowed by the two drop backup.
Yeah, I don't think this guy's terrible. It is expensive though, but I mean, you're
hmm
typically gonna kill something, and then it's his second ability is pretty cheap, and then you could play another one.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
but yeah, I think his cost might hold him back from being like super competitive.
I agree. I agree with that.
So next up we have Bard, another 2 CP backup. Backups seem popular, nice, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tap, break. Each player discards a card from their hand. You can only use this ability during your turn.
Yeah, we just got done talking about another two CP backup that kind of does the exact same thing, and his name is Kazuza. Um, now, I don't believe Kazuza breaks himself. I believe that's when he enters the battlefield,
So
right?
Kazuza has both. Yeah,
Okay.
so he has the ETB and then he can break himself, so he can do it twice.
Okay, so maybe this card is fine, just as more of that, but I don't know kind of where it fits because I feel like the backup line with Ice is already kind of tight as it is. The deck itself is already kind of tight, so maybe I could see it sneaking in somewhere, but I don't know.
Yeah, I actually like this card
hmm
in current builds just because it's a multi-unit
hmm
and it's a tap break and it's a 2 CP backup. I think it's pretty decent. I
Yep.
think
And
it'll
that
see
could
play.
and it could also help with another two drop we'll talk about here in a little bit too.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's pretty good. So I don't
Yeah,
think it's like crazy good, but I think it's pretty good.
sure.
Next up, we got our first ice forward. So it's a 5 CP Kuja. He's a 9K EX burst. When he enters the field, choose one forward or monster, dull it and freeze it. Put 2 ice packets in the break zone. Return Kuja to your hand. You can only use this ability during your main phase and only if Kuja is in the break zone.
I think he's great. Yeah, he is our first ice legendary for Opus 6. We have this ability on another ice forward by the name of Genesis. Now, granted, Genesis gets more value after the fact, but the fact that this Kuja gets that off a burst and it can affect monsters, that can stop, maybe a Cactar activation for a little while. It can stop Cobalt droids from attacking. There's a lot of utility when it comes to monsters, but I do think for the most part, when this guy comes in, he's getting a forward out of the way, and the fact that in some builds you can pitch him early and get him back by breaking like Banana Sid, and maybe you'll break your Duke Larg if it can win you the game. So I don't know. I think he's fine. I don't know in what capacity people will be using him.
Yeah, I think he's pretty good. I think he's a fair Genesis, honestly.
I agree with that 100%.
Just because he costs 5 CP. Even though you can recur him. But like his recursion isn't like super cheap. The EX burst I think is what really keeps him playable. It doesn't just make him just a redundant Genesis. So I think he'll maybe see play in some decks, but I think in like the current build of Mono Ice, I don't really see him seeing much play.
For sure.
But I don't think he's bad, and I think there are going to be decks that will run him, and people will definitely try him out. So next up we have Kurosame, another 5 CP ice forward, 7K type 0. He's an EX burst. When he enters the field, you may search for one card named Enema or one card named Kazusa added to your hand, and he has a field ability. It says the ice forwards you control other than Kurosame gain 1,000 power.
See, the more I think about this guy and see this guy is kind of a mirror breaker when you're looking at decks that have ice forwards in it, because what's better than an 8K Genesis? A 9K Genesis. What's better than a 9K Celeste? A 10K Celeste. You see where I'm going with this? And I feel like this guy, like if both guys have your Duke Larg out, I feel like the first guy if you're playing an Ice Mirror, first one to jam this guy, you're probably going to take over the game. I didn't know how I felt about him at first, but the more I look at him, I think this guy's a lot more playable than we realize.
Yeah. So the original version of Enema, I think, if I'm not mistaken, makes this guy cheaper by 1. So that makes him a 4 CP, which I think is really good.
Yeah, I agree.
So maybe in some sort of deck that's not the current discard deck, or maybe it gets modified to the point where you can run this guy, backup Enema, and probably the other backup Kazusa, the cheaper one, not the expensive one.
Yeah, and you're still keeping them with the discard as well.
Yeah, because I think if you're running the more expensive one, then it's a little bit more clunky. But if you can play those cheap guys and you can play this guy for 4, I think he's great. And like you said, like the extra Anthem will help in the mirror match for sure. So next up we have the new Doom Train, which is actually named Doom Train.
No, finally.
So it's a 4 CP ice summon. If your opponent has one card or less in his or her hand, the cost required to play Doom Train is reduced by 2. And choose one dull forward, deal at 9K.
I don't know. I think ice summons are kind of tight. I think it's a good card. I think there is use for it. I just don't know where. And I think it's going to take some time. Like I think there's going to be one of those cards that people are going to test. They're going to be like, well, let me cut one of the Glacias and one of these to try 2 of these. And I think this is a card that people are going to experiment with, but I just don't know where it belongs.
Yeah, I think if you cut Glacias for this, you're probably making a mistake.
I agree.
Yeah, at least that's my feeling right now. I mean, if you can play this for 2, it's probably good, but it's still like, yeah, they have to be dull. It's not like you can just do it to any forward.
Right.
The reason why Glacia is so good is because it's super versatile. I find it hard to think that this is going to see play over some other summons that we already have. But maybe dealing with a dull forward and killing it and dealing 9K is probably decent to get it off the board. But I don't think it's that great, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I can see it, but I just don't know where.
So next up we have Militesi Coral, the type 0 monster. For 0, till end of turn, it becomes a forward, 5K power. When it attacks, choose one forward, dull it. You can only use this once per turn.
I actually like this card. I think it's just infinitesimally better than Swamp Monk, just because it's free to activate. And then it becomes one of those things where now, if you're using this thing, I think it goes back. Remember the old Opus 4 Ice Lightning Mecha Chocobo decks, people were playing around with?
It was just
I
me.
think.
I was the only person playing that.
Oh no, there were a couple people. You and
There,
Will Buckley was on it too, but I think I think this guy has, again, I don't know in what capacity or where, but he becomes one of those monsters that's like, or another forward where now your opponent's got to double up and they got to put more pressure on the board. So I think he's fine. Again, I don't know where. I could see as maybe like a one of in some like Ice X decks maybe, but again, I don't know.
yeah, I think he's okay. My issue is, yeah, is I don't know where he fits. Because, I
Hmm.
mean, he does what Snow does, but he's a monster, so it's harder to remove him unless Snow has, like, the Sarah backup, which is 2 cards at that point.
Right.
He is better than Swamp Monk, but the fact that he costs 3 actually hurts him a little bit just because you can't get him
Mhm.
back with, like, Sid Waff or, like, if you're playing some Ice Warrior
Right.
with Gao or something.
Hmm.
But the free activation, I think, is what's nice.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what seems to be a theme in this set is the free activation monsters.
Hmm.
But I think he's decent, and like you said, maybe if like a Mecha Chocobo deck is decent, he's gonna be pretty good. But I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So
Uh,
the potential's there. I think some of these cards have a lot of potential for some really unique brews. So.
yep. So next up we have 3 CP backup summoner
Hmm.
standard unit. For 1 colorless tap break, choose 2 ice summons in your break zone. Add them to your hand.
I think it's fine in Ice X decks. I think just being able to recur, a Mateus, a Shiva, or a Glacia that could potentially win you the game. So I think it's fine. Maybe it's like a one of. I don't see this thing really taking over backup lines. Definitely not in mono ice for sure.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I don't think it's like so crazy good that you're gonna see it in like every ice deck, but
Yeah, I agree.
maybe in like Ice Earth, to recur like Glaciate or something. I don't even know if it's good there to be honest. But
Yeah,
I think the three costing 3 kind of hurts. I think if it costs 2 and it was like a 2 and tap and break, it might see
hmm
more play. But
sure.
like you said, maybe in certain decks where you really need to recur Glacia or Mateus or something, it could be good.
Hmm.
Not terrible.
Yeah, I agree.
So next up, we got the best card in the set, right? So 1 CP Summoner backup blank
Oh,
text.
great card. Best card we've seen so far.
Yeah, so I mean, they're reprinting all the 1 CP backups, so we've seen one before. It's the same thing, so I'll just skip over that.
Yeah, but also too. I've said it before. I'm gonna say it again. This could be the rearing of a potential rotation down the line. Not anytime soon, but maybe down the line when they start printing stuff like. But also too, on the flip side, again, I've said it before. I'm gonna say it again. Maybe it makes stuff more draft friendly. This
Yeah,
set,
there could be a lot of things, and that's I think another talk for another time.
absolutely.
But next up we have Squall, 2 CP Ice Forward 5K. Your opponent has two cards or less in their hand. He gets haste and first strike, and if they have no cards in their hand, he gets plus 3,000 power.
I like him. I really want to find ways to use him. I was thinking about him in like Fire Ice because I really want to abuse this guy with Godot. But I think when you start mixing in Fire, you sacrifice the discard. And I think in the Turbo discard build, I think he is a superstar.
Yeah, I think in Turbo discard he definitely probably sees play.
Hmm.
I don't think he's that great just because of how much you have to do to like get him online. But if you can get him online,
Oh, he's a monster.
he's great. I mean, he's an AK haste first strike for 2 CP. So I mean,
Hmm.
maybe in Turbo discard because they can consistently get you to that point and keep you there, he might be really good. But in like the tempo decks, I don't know if he has. I don't know if you have room for him.
Right, and that's where I agree. That list is tight, and I
How,
don't think he's good enough.
However, similar to Mateus, the threat of this card could make people play differently against Ice. So like now you have to worry about are they playing 2 CP Squall? Because if I pitch my hand, he's gonna have haste. You know.
Yeah, and then if I can't recoup that, he's going to be a big guy with first strike as well, which is tough.
Yep. So next up we have 3 CP Snow. He's a
Mhm.
7K power. If you control Sarah, he gets 1,000, and if you control a Category 13 forward other than Snow, he gets 1,000.
I don't know. He's fine. He's great in title, I think.
So
He's just a 3
yeah.
mana 9K beater.
Oh, in title, I think he's great.
Yeah.
Actually, the more I think about this card too, I actually don't hate him. Because if you can play a deck that has room, it has to have room first off. For this card
Mhm.
and backup Sarah, now you have a
Mhm.
hexproof 3 CP 8K,
That is true.
which I think is really good. I feel like that's gonna be hard to deal with. And if you have some other 13 forward out, now you have a 3 CP 9K
Yeah.
hexproof, which can be good. But you have to play backup Sarah for that to work. So you have to have room in your ice deck for both cards. So
Maybe Ice Lightning 13 with a heavy 13 focus could be playable.
Yeah, so I actually think this card has the potential to be very good, even though it looks really bland.
Sure. So I can see that.
So next up we have Snow Giant. It's a 1 CP monster for ice, break. Choose one forward, dull it, and freeze it.
I'm never going to say that these 1 CP monsters are bad because a card like Urianger exists, regardless of the color. I think it's fine. Pay ice, choose a forward, dull, and free it. I think it has a lot of potential and limited to maybe just win you a game. But as far as constructed goes, I don't know where it sees play. But again, like you start throwing in cards like Urianger into the mix, and you never know.
Yeah, I mean Urianger can recur this. I think it's okay. Again, it's gonna be one of those cards where like I don't know if ice has room for it. It's not a bad card, but it's like I don't know what you cut to put this card in. But I mean, 2 CP to dull and free something ain't bad. So
no, I agree. I agree.
So next up we have 2 CP Celeste. She's a 5K forward for 2 ice. Celeste gains plus 3,000 power till end of turn. You can only use this ability once per turn.
Well, I'm gonna be biased on this one. I like this card. I think in some decks where you're running Celeste, I think she's a good one of, just because she's a 2-drop, which could help you get around some of these pesky unblockables. And there's one in this set that I think is potentially a problem. And the fact that, and also she, the monster builds, she can block Cobalt Droid, and she can also block Death Gaze and not trade with it. So.
Yeah, I think she's okay. I think the real question is going to be like, do you want more cards to use Runic? And I'm not really sure yet. Like, I feel like people are running 3 Celeste because Runic is strong. But do you need to run 4 Celeste? Like, is that necessary? But
no, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Now, I was gonna say, I also think you run 3 Celeste because the other Celeste is actually just a really good card as well. But I agree. I don't think that extra Runic is going to make much of a difference. So I like her because I'm biased towards 6 cards. I just don't know where you put her in.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the thing too. I don't think she's bad, but I'm not sure if she can really make a slot yet.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that 100%.
So next up, we got 4 CP forward Shock Trooper. He's a standard unit, 8K power, type 0. When he attacks, choose a forward opponent controls, break it, and break Shock Trooper.
I'm a huge fan of this card. As soon as I saw this guy, again, playing Fire Ice, as soon as I saw this guy, I was like, I'm going to abuse this guy with Sabin. Yes, it's a very fragile combo, but I'll tell you what, you get a critical break at the right moment. I think you just win the game off of that. And the fact that he's a standard unit, he's multi-unit, he's on curve too. So, I mean, at the very least, he's a decent blocker. And if you have Duke Largout, he's a 9K. Because now, granted, too, that ability is not a May. If you attack with him and you don't have a way to make him not break, he's going to break on the spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the only way he can safely attack without breaking himself, without saving, obviously, is if your opponent doesn't have any forwards, because then his effect just doesn't happen.
Exactly.
However, if you can get like Sabin online and do that, it can be hard to deal with if they don't have removal. It's going to be rough.
Exactly.
However, it does leave Sabin open to removal, which I think is why you use the word fragile, and I think that's correct. I think it's a cute combo, and there's other things you can do with this card, but I do think everything that you can do with this card is kind of fragile, to be fair.
Oh, yeah. It's a glass cannon.
Yeah. So if it works and they don't have removal, it's going to be rough, because their things are just going to start dying. Especially if they can't get around Sabin either. Like, if they have no way to kill Sabin, you're not killing this guy either. So, I think it really depends on if that's going to be good, how much play he sees. But I could see him seeing play in Fire Ice for sure. I think that's where he kind of finds his home.
Absolutely. And then if you don't, and then at the very least, if you have those guys out and you slam a Paravir on the table, I think they're in trouble at that point anyway.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's another card that combos with him. It does the same thing as Sabin. The problem is that doesn't see too much play.
Maybe it might now, but I don't know. I like it. I like it.
Yeah. So next up, we got 5 CP summon Hades. Use one dull forward, break it. The owner of the forward discards a card.
It's fine. I think this is gonna be fine in sealed. I don't think it sees much play in constructed. Just, man, if this thing had EX burst, I'd be all about it. But otherwise, not much happening here.
Yeah, I think because it doesn't have EX burst is kind of what holds it back, honestly. And I'm glad it doesn't, because Ice doesn't need anything like that, to be honest.
That is true. It is a 7 card though, so that should make you happy.
Yeah, I mean it's decent title, but I've gotten all these other 7 summons now. It makes me kind of lower on it, to be fair. But
True.
like, I mean, it's not awful, but it's not great. And again, it's gonna fall into that category of like, where do you fit it in? So
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of ice cards that fall into that category in the set.
Absolutely.
So next up, we got 1 CP forward, Borgen. It's a 3K. When he's put from the field to the break zone, your opponent discards a card from their hand.
Yarg. I love the cap in here. I'm a big fan of this guy. Um, and it's such a weird card, right? He doesn't really cost you much. I think his biggest drawback is he's going to take up slots in a 50 card deck. But I think like you put this guy on the table, if you attack with him, they're going to block him. He's going to die. They're going to discard a card. I think that he kind of forces a discard and just being just a little tiny body. I think he's neat in that regard. Obviously his payoff is on the back end, but I think he has some utility somewhere.
Yeah, I think because his discard is slower, it makes it worse.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he costs 1 CP doesn't really matter to me because Thaumaturge costs 2 CP, and I'm most of the
Mm-hmm.
time spending the same on him. I mean, I have to have a
Mm-hmm.
backup established to this guy. So if you want to be technical, this is slower than Thaumaturge.
Sure.
Because you would rather just pitch 1 card to play Thaumaturge than pitch 1 card to play this card.
Sure. I don't
So
disagree.
yeah, I think that's really gonna be why it doesn't see much play. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
cute with Mateus because you want to block this. Probably you don't want this to do damage to you because that feels terrible.
Uh-huh.
But you don't want to block it either because you don't want to discard a card. However, the opponent does get to control when they discard the card,
Exactly.
unless you have something that breaks it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So next up, we got Laguna to 3 CP forward 4K. When he enters the field, search for a card named Squall, add it to your hand.
I really wish this card had EX Burst. I'm not saying it's a bad card, but it's definitely not a great card. I mean, obviously, anything with a mono art, I thoroughly enjoy. But I don't know. If this had EX Burst, I'd like it a lot better. But you can search out Legendary Squall. You can search out the new 2-drop. But at that point, are you playing this guy? I think in title, he's amazing.
Yeah, he's probably pretty good in title.
Mm-hmm.
He's a heroic, so I hope I don't pull it.
Yeah, oh boy. If I pull that guy, I want to have a foil Squall in that same pack if they're going back to that.
Yeah, I mean he's underpowered. He only searches for one thing, like one specific card
Mm-hmm.
name. I mean, granted, Squall has like 4 cards now, but I mean he's limited in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he sees much play, but in title for sure.
Now, if it said like search for Squall and put it on the field, we might be onto something there.
Oh, I mean that would be really good then. Yeah.
Yeah.
So next up we got the second
Speaking of
ice,
really good,
second ice legendary, Renoa. When she enters the field, choose a forward other than Renoa you control, remove from the game, and then play the remove forward onto the field duel. So basically, it's a blink, and she's a 7K. So
yeah, we've got a Restoration Angel in this game finally, and wouldn't you know it, it's in the element that has all these amazing ETB triggers. So there, obviously, we've seen this effect before with Time Mage, but it was just way too expensive. I think the fact that now it's on a body that you're going to have your Duke Largs, you may even have your Kurisames. Like, this card's going to be a body that will have to be dealt with. And now you're blinking your Genesis, you're blinking your Orphan, you're blinking a Setzer, you're blinking a Vivi if you're playing Fire. Like there's a lot of value that this card brings to the table. And now, and granted, at the very worst, you're playing a vanilla 4 CP 7K. I've probably played worse at some point in my time playing this game, but you don't know when this thing is coming, right? Like you have to have something on deck and kind of know when this is coming to be able to respond to it. I think it's great. I think it's an absolutely great card.
yeah, I mean it's time age, but it's way less telegraphed, and it's actually cheaper.
Yeah.
Not technically. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of cool things you can do with it. I do think a lot of the more like the better stuff is done outside of Ice. I mean,
Oh,
yes,
correct.
Ice does have some good ETBs like Genesis and stuff like that. But I'd rather play this with other cards that have like I think Water probably has some of the best ETBs in the game.
Oh, my man, Viking. Oh, this girl just draws you cards, just two cards alone, just off of Viking.
Yeah, so I mean it's pretty good. So I think this is probably gonna be the Chase Legendary of the set, at least at first. That's my guess. So yeah, I think she's gonna go in a lot of things. I think people are gonna experiment a lot with her, and she does a lot for 4 CP. So,
Yep, absolutely.
and last but certainly least is 4 CP Lock. Uh, He's a 7K, and when he enters the field, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck, add one Category 6 card among them, put it in your hand, and put the rest at the bottom.
Well, he's a rock star in the 6 title deck, that's for sure. But let's be honest. I don't think he's going to see any play. If he did see play in Constructed, it would just be because he's an extra Mirage Dive. And let's be honest, Mirage Dive is probably how many games have you won just off of just a 6 point of damage? Here comes Mirage Dive, lock over the top.
Yeah, I mean, Mirage Dive's really good. However, I'd rather just play Scholar to recur my lock than play this.
I want to take this card and alt art it to where he's wearing like a football helmet because this guy's just straight for like the lock over the top goal line play. That's all he's doing.
Yeah, but in title he's great. It is one thing to note that it's a 6 card. It's not just a forward, so you can if they print more 6 summons or whatever in the future, you can grab those too. But
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I think this guy right now is pretty bad. And if you're running him, yeah, you're running for a 4th lock, and I don't think you really need to do that right now.
Exactly, because you have so many ways to get you said Scholar and stuff. So yeah, absolutely. But I don't know, man. Overall, I think Ice is really good. I think he's got some good cards here.
Yeah, I feel like they got enough stuff that's pretty good to improve upon things, but I don't know what really improves the discard build, which is like the current tier 1 deck, and maybe that's a good thing, to be honest. Like maybe
100%.
Yeah, like having another archetype come out of Ice might be good, or people experimenting with like Ice X stuff that doesn't involve just the discard.
One card. If you had to pick one card from this element you're excited to play with, what would it be?
Renoa.
Yeah, same. Absolutely same.
Yeah.
Well, that and Shock Trooper, obviously. But I got to pick one.
Yeah, I mean, Renoa obviously has the most potential, I think, to do a lot of things. So,
I agree.
Yeah, so that's it for Ice. I think next up will be Wind. So look forward to that one. And so, yeah, sign off. Catch you next time.